Hello and welcome to my kitchen. In this video, I'm going to show you how to make rice pudding. Now this is an overnight rice pudding and the recipe is really easy and it's absolutely delicious. So let's get cooking. 3/4 of a cup or 150 grams of pudding rice. Now as we're making rice pudding, I do suggest that you get pudding rice. 4 pints of milk. Now I'm using whole milk, but you can use semi-skimmed milk as well. 3/4 of a cup or 150 grams of granulated sugar. For garnishing and flavoring, I'm using ground cardamom, ground nutmeg, and I'll be slicing up these almonds to garnish right at the end. So wash and soak your rice. To make the rice pudding, I suggest you use a cast iron pot or a Dutch oven like this, because what I'm going to do is use it on the stove. I'm going to stick it in the oven and then I'm going to bring it back to the stove. Now if you don't have one of these, you're going to need a pot, a large pot to heat up the milk, and then you're going to need a large Pyrex dish or a Corningware to put into the oven with the rice, and then you're going to need another large pot to use on the stovetop again. So these are really good. All right, so I'm going to heat up my milk on the stove and I have my rice soaking. So basically I'm just soaking my rice until I've brought my milk to a boil. So the milk has been coming to a boil on medium-high heat, which is number 7 on my hob, for about 20 minutes. And I'm actually going to get ready to turn my oven on to 150 degrees just to get it going. So that starts warming up, and I did get a layer of skin on here and it's fine, just add it to your milk. A little bit of the skin that was in there. I'm just mixing that in. And just a tip, when you're making your rice pudding in your Dutch oven and you're heating up the milk or you're cooking it in the 3rd stage on your stove top, you have to make sure that it doesn't stick at the bottom. Otherwise, when you're stirring it, what will happen is you'll scrape the bottom of the pan and you'll get floating burnt bits of milk in your rice pudding. So be sure that it's not sticking at the bottom while it's heating up. So just drain the rice. Okay, so this has been going for 30 minutes on a medium-high heat, and I do see a few little brownish like pieces of milk that I've scraped up from the bottom. And if you see that, just go ahead and move the strainer around and remove those bits. See, I can see a little bit here and there. Or if you feel like your milk is completely burnt at the bottom, go ahead and strain all your milk. But it's better to do it now, because after you put your rice in, you cannot strain it. Okay, and this looks ready to me. So I'm going to go ahead and put the rice in. I'm going to give it a quick stir. And then I'm going to put it into the oven with the lid on. So when you put this in the oven, you have to have the lid on, otherwise it's just, you're going to get a crispy top on the rice pudding and it's not going to be good. So make sure you cover this. All right. Pot is going into the oven, which is preheated at 150 degrees, and I'm going to set it to cook for 1 hour. And Then once it's done cooking for an hour, I'm just gonna leave it in there overnight. And then I'll check it again in the morning. So my oven is set to cook the rice pudding for 1 hour, and this is a great dish because you can set it and forget it, but you have to make sure that your oven does turn off after 1 hour. So mine's set on a timer and the oven does switch off after an hour, but you're gonna leave the rice pudding in there. So in the morning when you get up, your rice pudding will be done and you just need to finish it on the stove. So it's a great dish for preparing when guests are coming because it's a dessert that's ready to go and there's not much else that you need to do once we're finished with the cooking in the oven. All right, so it's the following morning and I just took out the rice pudding from the oven and let's take a look at it. Okay, so this is how it's gonna look once it comes out because the milk was cooking in there with the rice, and look at the rice. The rice is done now. So you don't want to scrape all the brown bits off. Okay, so the rice is definitely done. You want it nice and soft, and it is nice and soft. Nice and creamy. Okay, so what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna turn the heat on, but when I turn the heat on, now that the rice is cooked like this, we really need to make sure that we're stirring constantly, otherwise it's gonna stick at the bottom. So I'm gonna turn the heat on, medium. So it's on 5 and I may need to turn it down, and I'm gonna add the sugar in here. Let's just heat this up until the sugar dissolves. I'm also gonna add spices in here. So I like cardamom in here and some nutmeg. Now I know the Greeks add cinnamon, so you could add cinnamon in here, whatever spices you like, but I'm gonna add cardamom and nutmeg. Now there's no real measurements for the cardamom or the nutmeg, it's really to taste, but for now I'm just going to put a heaped 1/4 teaspoon in here, and then if I feel like I need to add more, I'll add more. And I'm just going to grate some nutmeg. Now nutmeg has a really strong flavor, so I'm just going to put a little bit, not too much, maybe a pinch. Just keep stirring until the sugar dissolves, which won't take too long. Now if you like your rice pudding thicker than this, then all you need to do is keep cooking it on the stove top, but you'll have to keep stirring. Otherwise, for me actually, this consistency is great. It's nice and creamy, you can see the milk, you can see the rice, but it's not all in one like lump, which I don't like it like that. I like a little bit of texture, so it's your choice. However you like it, you can change the consistency. But this is so easy to make. You know, if you're having guests over, this is perfect. But remember to change the pot because that doesn't look very appetizing, but that is the cooked milk on the side. So I'm gonna give it a little bit of a taste. I think the sugar has melted now, so I'm gonna taste it, make sure there's enough sugar, and see how the spices are in there. Oh my God. It's so delicious. Actually, the sugar is perfect and it's so nice and creamy. So I recommend that you use whole milk in here because the texture and the flavor of the rice pudding, oh my God, it's actually really, really good. This is a recipe my mother-in-law gave me, and she had these measurements, and she said she always gets compliments on her rice pudding. So definitely give this recipe a try. It's so easy. And if you like these tips and recipes that I'm showing you, don't forget to give me a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. Oh, that is delicious. So I'm using this big little, it's actually a small pan, to do tempering, and I'm using that to transfer it into this dish. So I transferred the rice pudding into 2 containers. Now, as you can see here, there's quite a lot. It's probably good for 6 to 8 people. Once you've transferred it, the temperature is actually warm. So what I'm gonna do is just garnish it with a little bit of cardamom. And I had chopped some almonds up earlier. So I like to put the almonds at the end so that they remain crunchy. And your rice pudding now is ready to serve.